Guys, it is nearly time for Set 4 to be released in English, and after a long period of time, well actually just only 1.5 months or so in Japan, the decks have gotten more meta than, is it meta? No, more meta than before, right? And, you know, since you're playing in English, you want a nice head start in seeing what could be good for everything. So basically, I have made more updated lists of everything in English deck log. So you get pretty much one list for every single archetype. And some will be nicer than others, but all of them will be quite exciting. Not guaranteed, but quite exciting. So first, we're going to start off. These are basically collated. These builds are all collated from, you know, results around, like, the last couple of months, or the last month or so. And just kind of, you know, the ideas have been aggregated into some nice looking decks. So first we have Nirvana. This has been surprisingly good, right? Grade 4 Nirvana is the way to go pretty much. And I think majority of players in Japan have been picking up on the prayer build, which is this card all the way back from set 2? Or no, set 3, where, you know, you can CB1 and then whenever you overdress, you get to draw a card. And your Vanguard gets 5k. So what this deck now does is basically like a 4-turn deck. On your grade 3, like you still do the same stuff, right? You know, turn 2, when you ride grade 2, you can do your nice arcs play for very, very good at the game, and then draw 2. But then on turn 3, if you have like 2 counterblasts, you can start to pop off, right? You just need the prayer, and then you just need overdress cards. And then you just overdress all the way up to, as much as you can, all the way up to like some expectors. And you can basically just do a bunch of damage that one turn. It also works if in 1 CB, right? Having 2 CB just means you can do the prayer plus something else. So that could be an arcs to draw more cards, or you can pop off with an expector and just go ham, right? But if you only have 1 CB, you can just do the prayer and then pop off again and then just go. And then on turn 4, ideally, you ride your grade 4 Nirvana and just kind of just win from there. You can ping 1 damage, call a card out, and then just call a grade 0 out, and then just overdress and kind of do the thing. You basically only need a prayer once, but the 1 prayer turn is so swinging, it's very important. When you do the prayer as well, because you're making your side columns huge, you don't need to use Nirvana's CB1 skill to like give your overdress units 10k. You just don't need to do that anymore. So you can just pop off, go, then turn, then ideally hit them to like 4 damage, where then your grade 4 Nirvana will ping a damage. He's at 5, and then you can start going again with pretty big columns, right? Nirvana, grade 4 Nirvana, Maha Nirvana swings with triple drive. It'll be likely just 23k, giving 10k to the front row as long as you have an overdressed unit. And then that should be enough to close the game. If you lose one of your expectors or valientes, then you can, you know, ideally you have the new Esmeralda that you can call out, and then you can kind of do the multi-attack combinations from there. And then you have like a new grade 1. We've got Retsuji that can kind of search out whatever you're missing. So overall, very fast deck. I actually do like playing this much more than old Nirvana. Just because being able to, on that 1 turn, when you're just like drawing a bunch of cards, feels very, very nice. Of course, you don't actually plus, but if your opponent is a deck that cannot deal with your fat grade 3s, it's really good. And it kind of forces a lot of other decks nowadays to play some form of retire. Otherwise, you're sitting there on Esmeraldas and Valientes. They're super fat. They can't deal with them, and you just get more value from the next turn. The only problem is when you're facing into prison, then you have to be a bit more craftier. You might not want to kind of overdress as much, maybe. Or if you do overdress, you want to make sure you're popping that expector out and getting rid of all that. Otherwise, everything is going into prison, right? Everything is going to prison. And that's a feels bad. So that's just something to be careful. But overall, I do like this deck quite a lot, and it is performing decently, I guess. Probably like the tier 2 or so of the metagame. But moving on to other Dragon Empire decks with Eugene. Eugene really hasn't gotten much. It's basically doing the same thing it has in set 3. Got a new card called Travis, and he's alright. He's Soul Charges 1. When you've retired something, so ideally from Eugene, so you can CB1, and then you get to Soul Charge 1, and it gets retire another one of your opponent's units, and then gets 10k. You're comboing off his best Harvest as well, the order. And apart from that, you have this like nice dinosaur now that can stand. So you'd rest this and then stand it when something gets retired. It's like, yay, free value, 10k booster. But yeah, apart from that, nothing too crazily good. Nothing too insane. You got a new draw trigger. That's kind of it. You know, that's kind of it. We are running 3 of this card now. It's just kind of nice. It's a 6k, but it gets 5k on the turn it comes out. But, you know, if you drawn it early for the ride deck, you can use this card instead as your ride, as your kind of like ride discard. So it's just nice. You can place it down, attack with it, and then it goes to soul kind of thing. So pretty cool. And then look, if it comes out from anywhere else, it's like an 11k booster for the turn. So it kind of helps boost 4 numbers and then kind of get rid of it next turn maybe. Or just, rest it next turn. So overall, not much to say about Eugene, except it just kind of does its own thing, put in all the good Eugene cards. And yeah, you've got a deck, all right? Same thing can be said for Overlord. There's not really much changes with Overlord, except it just gets bulkier. We have new orders now. That is the 20k Dragonic Overlord order, which is cool, right? We still have the Madokas. It's like a lot of shield, so heaps of shield there. We got a lot of shield from the fronts as well. We are running some new cards, I guess. Well, they're not really new cards, but we got Stun Voltec Dragon, which is just basically 18k, and we have the new card here. Well, not really a new card, but a card that I don't really play, but we've got Cruise Rock Dragon that can kind of just move things to the front, so you can bash them more. But otherwise, the game plan really hasn't changed. Get super bulky, and yeah, that's it. Just get super bulky, attack a couple of times, and just kind of Overlord. This is probably going to get more support in set 5. That's just how it is, right? So we saw the nostalgia support. Just wait for set 5. And then lastly, I've got Bavsagra. Bavsagra really got the boost it kind of needs. I've kind of talked about before, but pretty much you run a lot of spears. You want spears. Spears can let you double arm immediately, which makes everything hit fat. We also run Adaria, which will let you double equip as well. So these are basically the 8 cards you want to run to double equip this first turn you ride grade 3, and that means your Trick Moon suddenly hit like a truck. Your Greedon Booster hitting like 13k, right? It doesn't even need a boost. You can just attack with it and it's hitting 13k. That's super cool. But yeah, apart from that, we still run 2 swords. It's still nice. It's a 10k buff. You can throw the sword as well, and then the shield is just the most excellent kind of card for your left arm. You don't care about the gun. That's pretty much it. We are running Travis as well in this build because you can retire the front row with Bavsagra skill and then pop off with this. This also generates a soul, which is nice, and then also gets 10k. So it hits big, and also like just helps mitigate Bavsagra's cost, because then you can like with her, when you arm, you soul charge 1, then he can kind of arm as well. Well, not arm, he can kind of soul charge 1, so when you're soul blasting, it just gets refunded, and you can keep on doing that pressure, and your opponent's kind of forced to commit more cards onto the field if they're losing boosters and things like that too. So overall, very fast, just make big early plays, right? The turn you hit grade 3, you make those big plays, big swings, and then your opponent is like so destabilized, there is not much he can do. All right. Moving on, we have Dark State. So Baro is actually, I think, the king of Dark States right now. It's basically gotten 2 great cards, so the Brainwash Swirler, getting power to just... Soul charging and getting power is basically everything that, Baro wants, right? And now, instead of hitting, like, really weak first attacks, because of Swirler, it can hit for huge first attacks, and then followed up with big second attacks too, right? And then it's got some added consistency from Quagra, right? It just gives power, also gets to grab a card from Soul and put it into your hand. So that's good. You can get key cards in order to win. We're still running, the resetter, but also, the Pandemonium Tactics. The Pandemonium Tactics and Swirl are just like a great combo. And then just turbo to 15 and just kind of go, right? There's some changes you can do. You can change up, add some, like, instead of running the Spartans or running 3 Spartans, you can change that for some defensives or just add anything else you want. But overall, the deck is pretty solid, pretty standardized as well. This is what basically we've been seeing in Baro Magnus for quite some time now. It's got figured out pretty quickly, and it's just kind of been dominating the metagame. One deck that hasn't really been showing up that much is Bruce. Though Bruce is kind of in this weird position where people are either committing to the grade 4 Bruce, or they're still running grade 3 Bruce, or they're running the grade 3 Bruce with some grade 4 support. So basically, it really hasn't been figured out at all. This time, we're featuring the grade 4 Bruce. You do notice that we're not running Marjorie's anymore, because Marjorie, although it's a nice card, you deck out a lot in this deck. You are going through this deck crazily. Like you have to go fast through this deck, and then you have to use things like Swirlers and Tactics to kind of just buff that power line really, really quickly. You don't have a long game with this deck. You don't have a long game at all, right? The rest of the deck is just evolving around how to make your front line bigger, because unfortunately grade 4 Bruce doesn't really get power at all. He hits like a kind of a wet noodle because, you know, again, like the Bruce lines usually did rely on Persona Ride, and you just don't have Persona Ride anymore. So although it gets triple drive, it gets to restand. It does use a counter blast as well now for restand, so that's a bit of a kind of nerf. You don't have power. You don't have power, so you have to find different ways to do it. There's other ways to do it now. So you've got Brian. This card was out in set 3, but now in set 4 it's something way more useful. It gives your Vanguard a crit as well to get that crit pressure. We do have things like the Quen Lu as well, just to give guard restrict, and we also have this new grade 2 for Lyle. So when it's placed, you can counterblast 1, get 5k, and soul charge 2. Right, if you're in Final Rush, and then choose a card from Soul and call it out. So you can call out key pieces. Eden's in Soul, call it out. Quen Lu was in Soul, call it out. Things like that, right? Or you need power, call this out. So ideally, your turn is Pandemonium Tactics to give 10k to the front row. Then something like a Brian. So your Vanguard's at least hitting for 28. And then something like a Swirler would be pretty good, right? A Swirler on one of the columns that you can Quen Lu it. And then that thing's hitting like a truck. That thing's at least hitting for 33 with Pandemonium Tactics, right? So that's pretty good, right? And then if you soul charge 2 from Lyle, that's like 43. We're actually hitting good numbers. Brian's also buffing it for like 48 now, so that's insane numbers, right? That's insane. And it restands with Quen Lu, so that's cool. Otherwise, you're buffing the Eden or something like that. But at least you're giving at least some pressure from the Vanguard that restands with a crit. And then this one that can't be like null guarded, right? So that's kind of where it is. But again, there's still a lot of different variations for Bruce right now. It hasn't actually been figured out. So here's, at least this could be like a head start at least for you if you want to test out the grade 4 Bruce, right? And the last of the Dark States is the super copium deck, Greedon. Now, I actually don't really like the word copium that much, but after I started, playing and building Greedon, it just perfectly explains this deck. Nothing in this deck really works at all. Everything is counterblast restricted. Things like the Time Girardi is your best grade 3 because you can put a Greedon into Soul. It's like you want a Persona Ride to get power, but then you don't because you don't want to draw. And then your Time Girardi draws a card, of course. That's cool, but you're going through a deck. Nothing ever pluses with this deck, so you're forced to run draws, which takes you out faster. Before you were forced to run Gungarams, now we just run Swirler anyway, because you're never going to draw with Gungaram anyway, because you never want to use that Soul. But you also forced to Soul Charge because you want to have at least decent quality Soul, so you don't Soul Blast out important stuff, right? You have some new multi-attack options, so you have this new Babetsu, which sounds really good, but it requires a counterblast, and then you need 10 Soul, which is not exactly the easiest to get, because once you reach 10 Soul, you're in deck out range, or you're on a very, very tight clock. And then you also draw a card, so at least it replaces itself, but you draw a card. So you want to draw a card, because you just don't have any ways to plus, but then you deck out quicker, right? And then you have another card that's also, Cannon's pretty good, right? You can call the top card of the deck, so you can kind of Soul Charge it in with Greedon skill, but again, you're going through a deck. This guy is 9k as well, so it's a load of garbage. Yeah, CB1 too. It's CB1 as well. So there's just a lot of things wrong with this deck. Nothing works together. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's just it super feels bad. It's literally like a set. It's like a set 3 deck as well that didn't really get enough changes, and I don't know when it is gonna get any changes. So yeah, it feels bad being Greedon. I feel like I never want to build this deck ever again. Right? I don't know how the Greedon fans can put up with it. At least you have 7 damage, right? At least you have 7 damage. So technically you have an extra CB to play with, but let's be real, it's not enough. It's honestly not enough, right? Alright, moving on to Bastion. Alright, Bastion, surprisingly, everyone's been rating Bastion quite highly, but then after the results have come in, it really hasn't done much, I mean, people say, yeah, the grade 4 Bastion is not a grade 3. That's nice, but it's just like Bastion really hasn't gotten any change in what it does from set 1. Sure, okay, it's got rag reel, so it's got extra high roll capabilities, but extra high roll capabilities was not what it was needing. It wasn't needing that at all. And then overall, yeah, just doing restands. I guess restands are cool. Don't get me wrong, restands and high power is cool, but everyone else has gotten some better resources now. So Bastion is actually a deck that really hasn't been figured out at all. So you're still running 4 of the OG Bastion, just because OG Bastion's good, right? And if you ever fail to ride a grade 4 Bastion, at least you have a grade 3 Bastion to fall back on, which is fine. And then once you ride grade 4 Bastion, okay, you get triple drive, you get to restand a bunch of stuff. That's all good. Like, yay, cool. Nice. But then, like, you're forced to discard Bastions as well. You're forced to discard Bastions or pop Bastions from Soul. So you actually need, like, a lot of Bastions, right? You run some new grade 3s. So here we have is Baro. And when it stands, you can kind of Soul Blast and draw a card. With this deck, you kind of just want to pop out your Soul as much as possible because you don't want to just lose to Seraph Snow. And then once this card can, like, kind of give 5k to the card in front, or your front row stuff in the same column. So yeah, it's like a pseudo weak boost. And then you have a defensive grade 3 now that is pretty nice. It's just a 20k shield straight up, and then we run the rag rails as well. But I think the key part of this deck that's been really popping up recently is they've been running this new booster. Well, not new. They've been teching in this order which boosts, which gives you all your grade 3 boosts. Now, before when we saw this in set 3, we're like, just run Dark Strain, because, you know, Dark Strain is just nice, right? And this doesn't really set up anything on the field. You can also have to discard from your hand, so it feels bad. But nowadays, you run into things like Seraph Snow, where you actually want to get rid of everything in Soul. You just don't have anything in Soul at all. So Dark Strain, apart from the one turn at grade 3 where you just pop off, now you kind of, it'd be nice if you had a way to just continually, like, be able to boost, right? So this is kind of the way to do it. I found it was quite interesting. It was pretty cool seeing this. But apart from that, yeah, that's kind of where Bastion is. There's a bunch of other grade 3 techs that you can try running. But yeah, it's still up in the air on how to actually build this deck. Hexaorb here. Hexaorb got some really nice tools in this set. Again, it doesn't super plus like usual. The main card that I always like running in this deck is just Easrod Angel, because it just gives you a free card straight up for just Soul Blast 1. So it's really nice. It's really nice. Just getting free stuff is good. You do have restand options now. So we have this new card called Recurring Magic Larita. And just at the end of the battle, when you drive check, reveal the trigger unit. If you're on Hexaorb, you can CB1 and Soul Blast 1. And then choose one of your other regards and stand it, and then you retire this. So it's just kind of nice. You get multi-attacks in Hexaorb, which is really good. And then we have a new card, Esinono, here as well, that lets you kind of stack the top deck, which is also very, very cool. So you have a lot of different ways to stack the deck, right? And we're still running Nanofall to be able to kind of soul, like, give extra soul. But then the trigger lineup, we're not running fronts anymore, just because we're playing a very aggressive lineup. So we do need some ways to be able to just kind of draw. So having the draws is nice. Also draws a 10k now, so that's good. But yeah, just kind of stack your deck as much, be very aggressive, and then just hope for the best. Literally that's it. Literally that's it. And then lastly for Keta Sanctuary, we have PBD. So PBD got some nice stuff, right? It got some decent stuff. Doesn't really push it to like higher up in the tier list though, but I think it's at least better than Greedon. I'd probably rather play this than Greedon, let's be honest, right? Again, Easrod is just carrying the deck because it just makes stuff. Basically with Keta, right, the way I see it, at least with Hexa and Phantom Blaster, one which doesn't really get much advantage, the other just kind of sacrifices your own cards to maybe get advantage, right? You need Easrod. You just really need Easrod because it just makes free stuff, free junk for you to retire or use, right? So 4 Easrods carrying the deck. Again, we maxed out on the blaster lineup for Guido, just because Guido can only get blasters. So yeah, just max him out. It's not like the blaster cards are bad. You know, Dark is a 15k, and Javelin is a 10k booster, right? I mean, they could be better, but they could be worse at the same time. One of the new cards that we also got was Delbeth, and this one is just if you retire 2 or more cards, it's a 20k beater. So that's kind of nice. With Persona Rate it's 30, with the booster it's hitting 38, so yeah, it's nice. And then another new card that we've got is Mugain. So this lets us create a bunch of junk as well, right? We're not running any orders, so basically this is going to always hit, and then we just call junk that we can retire with, or maybe in the future use, because this one actually doesn't retire. They just come out and rest, so you can't use them immediately, but if you at least play it down, you can at least make stuff, right? You can make stuff. That's why we're just not running any orders. We're not running any orders. We are running draws. We are running like 5 draws because we still do want to kind of draw a bit more. But yeah, that's kind of it. Make junk, make stuff. You can pop it with PBD, or otherwise you can just kind of bash with it and hope for the best. Right? Cool. Moving on to Stoicheia. Stoicheia got insane buffs, right? Stoicheia got some really, really good buffs. The grade 4 Magnolia Elder is actually insane, right? Let's just kind of start with Magnolia because Magnolia is kind of the top dog right now, even though it's kind of a weird giant cat, I guess. Inlet Pulse basically makes this deck actually insane. Inlet Pulse, Flagberg support, but guess what, right? It can go into Soul and draw a card. So it solves your Soul problem, it lets you draw a card. Yeah, it's just really, really good. And you know what's good about Inlet Pulse and what you can do with it? You can just reuse it quite, like, as much as you can. So you can see this deck is running 2 Spiritual Body Condensations and 3 Regurgitations. The key component of this is that they call things out, right? They call things out, and they're likely calling an Inlet Pulse out that you can kind of just every turn at least get a draw, right? You actually don't use that much CB in the deck at all, right? So we put in things like Alania, and that's kind of it. That's all the CB. Grade 3 Magnolia kind of does the same thing too. But yeah, that's kind of it, you know, that's kind of it. A Regurgitation uses CB, but yeah, it's not required that you use a Regurgitation every turn. Alania allows us to like push early, and then the prize try to kind of, you know, fill up Soul and kind of countercharge as well. The key thing is that, you know, with grade 4 Magnolia, you do need a Magnolia somewhere, right? You need it either in Soul or on the field. So that's also another reason why we run these 2 cards, the Regurgitation and the Condensation, because they basically solve all our problems, right? Normally when we see a lot of these Magnolia decks, we see them run like 2 or 3 grade 3 Magnolia just so they can never have that problem where they don't have a Magnolia, so they can't get the super buff of Elder and just being able to attack and boost, attack and intercept from the back row, right? But if we're missing a Magnolia, we have ways to get it from the drop zone, right? And then once if we have it, then we can just get anything else we need, right? We can get, you know, Inlet Pulse. Nice, cool. That's basically it. So overall, you're gonna need the Pixie. You're gonna need N-Pix as well, because he's just great against the Purelight matchup, right? You know, you just set up a field. The Inlet goes into Soul, and then surprise! You can't touch my field anymore. So very nice. The Zorga lineup is actually just making pretty much all the Stoicheia decks work very, very well. Another good thing about Inlet Pulse as well is against like the Purelight matchup, when they prison it, you just call it out and yay, free cards, right? Free cards. It goes to Soul, draw a card. They prison next turn again, something. Usually you get to choose, so your Inlet Pulse goes there, you call it out, and then just keep on looping that. You can do the same thing with Prize Trident too. So overall, very, very nice. I do really like Magnolia a lot now, especially with Zorga. Alright, Zorga, making everything work. Speaking of Zorga, we also do have a Zorga deck, and although everyone memes a lot about Zorga, I actually do like Zorga quite a bit in the current format. It just hits big, it can hit fast. It can surprisingly hit fast. The idea is now we have this new meme dragon, right? Roaming prison dragon we memed about a long time. It's a 5k joke, but you know, if you are able to mill this very, very early, you can call it out pretty early too, right? And then as long as you use in order, of course. But yeah, you can call it out and then bam, let the fun begin, start beating. How do we actually get rid of them? Well, the new Twisted Malice, well, not Malice, right? Not new, again. It came out a long time ago, but it has its use now, right? Tearful Malice, actually. Tearful Malice actually doing work, because, you know, you call this stuff out for free, then next turn you kind of sacrifice them to get resource, and then call them out again, right? How good is that? So yeah, I do like this kind of weird loop, right? That means you don't really need to run that many other things like Agony anymore, or just other stuff that can kind of plus. We only run like 1 Regurgitation as well, because like these things just make the field, right? They make your front field, and then you just set up back field, and you're kind of good to go, right? As long as every turn you can call these out, it's good times. It's good times. Some of the orders were like changing. We run one wild intelligence just because it can kind of mill through the deck and call something out. Body Condensation, always good. Talked about the Malice. Despair, we always run 3. And then Regurgitation is also nice. And then we have this new nice Zorga one, which just gives us an extra drive check. If we're ever missing like a card, or it's just like a turn when we feel like, okay, I have all the pieces, this is a perfect thing to go into, where we can just get an extra drive check. And then also we have just kind of the Pot of Greed, right? This is also the other kind of, if we're set up, we're good to go, let's just draw cards. So yeah, these are basically, I like this deck a lot. I actually like this deck a lot. Hits surprisingly big. Has some kind of aggression now, although it's still triple attack, only 3 attacks, but yeah, it can kind of munch through your opponent's hand if they underestimate it. And then lastly, we have Flagberg, but this is more like a Zorgberg deck, right? Again, I mentioned before that Zorga ride line making everything worth it. So with Flagberg, right? What are the big issues with Flagberg? Is that you need cards that kind of restand or make restands. And although we got this, we got Intler Pulse Dragon again. He's been carrying a lot of decks, especially Magnolia on its back. This is supposed to be a Flagberg card, right? And it can restand. So how do we make this happen? So we have these orders, right? Basically, the 6 orders that we're running, Regurgitation and Spiritual Body Condensation, they let us target something to call out from the drop zone. So whenever we lose our Inlet Pulse, we can call out again. Whenever we lose our Ascendance Assault, we can call it out again. And then if we really, really need to, we can call out Aggress Blue Dragon for making another multi-attack. And that is how we're going to hit our 4 and 5 attacks as soon as possible. The reality is, the ride line for Flagberg is not that great, right? It's not that great. So you might as well run the Zorga one and let us get key pieces that we need. To solve other problems, right? We need Soul, we need Draw, we're missing an Inlet Pulse. Just get them, right? Or if we have an Inlet Pulse, get a Prize Trident. There. That is solved. And then we only run 1 of this high rate Burst Dragon because this kind of interferes without our Inlet Pulse. So this is kind of like an emergency. This is like if we're missing, if we totally bricked, this is our 5th copy of an Inlet Pulse that can kind of save us. But that's kind of it. But yeah, then we can just rely on our orders to save us. Regurgitation is also kind of useful nowadays because just against like the Nirvana matchup, remember how I talked in the beginning where they sit on fat expectors and just kind of bash your face? Well, now they don't get to. They lose stuff. They at least lose stuff. You can put some pressure and call it Inlet Pulse. How good is that, right? So yeah, Zorga again carrying the entire set. And then lastly, we got the Brand Gates. So Purelight, one of the most feared matchups currently in the metagame right now. You can see we're not running any more gimmicks in this deck. If you look at the early build of this, we ran things like the new grade 1, things like that. Nah, we don't need it anymore. Just run the good old stuff, right? The good old stuff. We got, Bug Motor, always useful, and then Shovel Stud. Gives us a draw, imprisons one of their units. Very nice. The two lineup is pretty much set in stone as well, I think. We do actually need 4 Macolites, right? Macorites. And then we also need 4 Cuff Spring, simply because although we do get a big buff in power nowadays, our front row gets massive. They also get crits when we reach that 10 prism mark. And then we drain their hand and soul and basically their resources with Purelight. This issue still stands. Some games drag on for a very, very long time, especially the Mirror, and we're going to reach that point in deck out, and when we're reaching that deck out time, then our Cuff Springs and Macorites are going to win us the game, and that is pretty much why they're still there. Apart from that, let them filter the deck. These are basically no interaction ways to increase your prison counts, so they will let us reach 10 easier, and then the one card they get to filter, they're probably going to drop it because, your stuff is hitting massive, unless it's a null. Unless we draw it to null, then you feel bad. But again, I think the pros still outweigh the cons. We still run the Rouge as well, because Rouge is just bulky and nice. And then we have 2 extra Seraph Snows, simply because they work on Rearguard, and also if you miss a grade 4, Persona writing is not bad. It's actually just not bad. You still can put on the pressure, and that's how you kind of survive, right? Running just a draw lineup too, you can replace it with fronts if you really want, but 10k draws are very, very cool, right? Moving on, we got the weakest part of Brand Gate right now, and that is Orfist. This is the sagness of the Brand Gate team. Like, the thing is, if you're running Orfist, why not just play Gravidia? Because you're pretty much running similar cards anyway, but Gravidia just does everything better. The key card here is Kuljamid, right? This card, I think, is basically the best card that Orfist has gotten in a while. Just read the effect. If your world is Dark Knight or Abyssal Dark Knight, this unit gets boost and can intercept for the front row. So this is basically a 10k boost. That means you can commit it the grade 2 turn on anything, and you can hit over triggers. That is so good. Then if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, this unit gets 10k shield. So it's also a 15k shield on your grade 3 turn. So it is bulky boost, it is bulky shield, it does everything you want, it lets you rush. It does everything. I think you should be running 4 of this. This is way better than the triple R that we got, that Orfist got. The grade 3, I think is Misera. It's garbage. That card is terrible, right? It is actually terrible. So yeah, if you're not running Kuljamid, I think you're doing it wrong. In Orfist, if you're still sticking with Orfist, you need this card. This card makes your rush better. And then you can get rid of it when you want Shadow Army tokens, right? Yeah, cool. Just get rid of it. You can boost your grade 2s, right? Boost your grade 2s, they'll hit over things. And then in terms of the order lineup, right? Running 1 of the Eclipsed, 3 of the Fang. But I'm also going back to 2 of this in the Darkness Nobody Knows. Because right now you have some good retire targets that you kind of want to go for. So you can just play this instead, rather than sacrificing a Shadow Army token for Alviderd, right? So I think it's a good trade-off, and then you have your grade 1s to kind of search through and get your worlds, and can convert into a Shadow Army token, and then your Bobomine is still good because it increases soul and can countercharge. But yeah, Coolja Mead is, I think that this is basically the best card that Orfist has got. I mean, Decijade's cool, like from set 3, but Coolja Mead, man, dude, solves a lot of problems in my opinion, right? And then lastly, let's talk about Gravidia. This is basically Orfist, but better. Right, Gravidia got some really nice stuff. This is pretty much just the Media World list as well. Just because it's just nice. Being able to get a 15k token on your turn 2 is cool. But now we have big media. We can go for the big plays more often. And then we just max out our stanners. Our new stuff that we actually got, the Shergo, lets us put back media cards. So it just keeps on letting us plus if all your medias are out and you have a Personalized set up, just make sure to play this and then bam. It's done. You also can increase like power, which is pretty important. So on your grade 2 turn, you can just kind of put back one media, right? And it gets 15. So that's a nice number. So you don't need that many of it. So just running 2 is fine. And then our grade 3 is also really insane. That's a burrito, right? Just lets us get a meteorite from drop. So straight up, this is insane. And then the second effect is like cool, but doesn't really come up that often. But just the first one, letting us get more medias, letting us get that engine to keep on going, is just very good. So you now have the option of kind of doing everything like you could do before. I think the rush by running this deck is less than the rush builds of set 3, but now your late game is way better and way more threatening. Your mid to late game is way more threatening. So technically, I think Gravidia is definitely well placed to be one of the strong decks in the format. But you know, you're competing in that Brandgate spot with Purelight too. So I think it's really up to you on which one you want to play. But it's definitely got some stiff competition. So that is it. That is basically all the decks for set 4. These are much more refined decks than the preliminary idea ones that we saw from previous at the beginning of the Japan season. So I hope you guys get hyped for this set as well. Because it's actually a big set. It's actually a huge set, and hopefully there's still a lot of things that are unexplored. Like I was talking about Bruce, Bastion. There's things that are still unexplored. So at least I hope this can give you a good start on where you should go. But apart from that, I hope you guys all have fun playing the set. It's definitely really good. Lots of nice implications for not just standard as well. Even premium has some nice things going with it. So yeah, it should be quite exciting as long as you get the cards. As long as you get the cards, right? So that is it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you tomorrow, all right?